Years. You're looking at me and you're like, yeah, this is super uncomfortable. This is not normal church. Which we're supposed to have sitting rows where I can see the person's back of the head, not the person looking at beside me. And if you're just getting here, if you've been here for a while, just know that I tend to do everything to make everybody feel uncomfortable, make everybody grow, do things that you're really not comfortable with doing, because on the inside of you is potential. And so putting some tables inside the sanctuary on a Sunday morning service is very uncomfortable for us. When you walked in, first, almost everybody that walked in was like, wait, what? What's going on? What's going on? We're doing something. And so that's just kind of how we roll around here sometimes, well, all the time. So you never know. Sometimes we'll have square tables. And so, am I okay? Scoot back a little bit. Camera adjustment. This is all. So we had an event last night. Pastor Me and I, we did a podcast last night, and it was kind of cool. It was fun. You have to see it on Wednesday. It was good. So we've been doing this series called Going for Broke. Say Going for Broke. And so this is our last service on this series, Going for Broke. And so what I wanted to do is I tried to get him to do like a whole couple of sessions, but I couldn't get him to do it. But I did talk him into doing something else, so he's working on that right now for us. But what I wanted to do is I want to do kind of a Q&A, because sometimes I'll say things in a service, and if you've been to church, or if you're hearing a preacher sometime preaching, whether it's online, in line, you line, their line, whatever it is that you're on, you're watching them and you'll hear things, and then I will say something, or you'll hear somebody say something from a minister's perspective or from a pastor's perspective, and then you won't agree with it. Right? Like I found out Friday night that McDonald's isn't a place that you just wind up at. It's sometimes a place that you actually just plan to go to. And so, they were like, Pastor, look, listen, I love you, but some of us like McDonald's. We don't wind up at McDonald's. And if you're hearing me and you're like, what is he talking about McDonald's? You got to go a couple of services and go back and listen and watch those. And so with that being said, I want to bring up Marco. He's on our stewardship team. My brother-in-law. He's been with us, been with me, been with my wife and I for a long time. I remember when he first time he showed up. Come on, sit down, man. First time he showed up, he was going to take Nikki on prom date or go to prom or something, and so he came in and he had his hat all. You remember that? You remember your hat all sideways, and he had those gold chains hanging everywhere. Pulled up in his little car, like he had a little car, and that's what it sounded like. What kind of car was that?
It's a Mitsubishi Mirage.
Is it on?
Yeah, I had it unmuted. It's a Mitsubishi Mirage, and it's kind of loud like Pastor Mia's car, so you can hear me coming from a mile away. Yeah. I thought I was cool because I had my...
No, he was cool. He didn't think he was cool.
I had my speaker system and my neon light set up. It was a cool little setup.
It was cool, so if you remember those days. And so he is always, from the time that I first met him, he's always been real good about managing finance. He's always been real good about looking at investments, looking at different ways to generate money. He's done really good for himself, for his family. Really involved with the church. And so I said some things, and I love him because he too sometimes like, well, Pastor, I know what you're saying, but here's something else that you're not really looking at it. That's all good and fine and dandy for you, Pastor Cello. But the rest of us here, we live in the normal world, and we're not all super spiritual Superman and stuff. And so I started laughing. I was like, okay, we're going to have a conversation now, because now I got to put you on blast. No, I'm joking. I'm joking. Actually, he's probably going to put me on blast. And so where my cards at, man?
But what I want to say is, Pastor, he was saying all those things about me. A lot of it is due to all the pouring into our lives that he's been pouring into me and others. So going through leadership classes, going through finance classes, going through how to handle your money, he was teaching me all this stuff. So I mean, it's not something. And I listen to other people, and I have other resources that I tune in to read, mainly hear and watch. But yeah, he's definitely been a big part of that to where that helps me out to be where I'm at today.
But he
So-
still disagrees with me.
yes.
So
Sometimes.
yeah, so saying that to say that sometimes when you have somebody, and I'm just going to say this, sometimes when you have somebody that's in authority over you, you may not agree with them, and this water's leaking all on my rear end right here.
It's not closed properly.
It's not closed. Well, I've got a wet butt now. We are now the Soggy Bottom Boys.
Soggy Bottom Boys. SBB.
DB, yeah. And so sometimes when somebody's in authority over you or that's leading you, it's okay. This is why I wanted him to come on, because we're not taught a lot of times in the church, especially in the church setting, in the Christian culture, that it's okay to disagree with somebody that's leading, somebody that, and when I say disagree and then have a different viewpoint, have a different experience. And so that's why I brought him, because I had asked him, I said, hey, I want to do some talking points. Man, send me an email. So he sent me this email, and the first thing he did is say, well, I know you said this and this, but I kind of disagree with that. And I was like, okay, we're going to have a discussion now. I got to bring him on. And so with that being said, so I'm going to give you a scripture. We've been talking about this pretty much the entire this entire series, if I can spit that out. And so in Corinthians, 1 Corinthians, is it 1 Corinthians, 2 Corinthians? What did I give you? 2 Corinthians. I wrote it down. 2 Corinthians chapter 9, verses 6 and 7. And in this passages of Scripture, Paul's talking about that it's up to us to decide how we give, where we give, when we give, and that we're not supposed to give out of pressure, out of reluctance. God wants us to give with a cheerful heart. Say cheerful heart.
Cheerful heart.
And so one of the things that we talked about earlier in the series is that we all give money to people, into things, into businesses, into organizations, and we make those decisions. And it's the only time that we make a distinction is when it comes to the church a lot of times. Like, well, I don't want to give them my money, but we'll go give HEB some money. We'll go give, we don't have a problem paying for our subscriptions. Like, we'll give money for those things. And so we kind of talked about that. I'm not going to hash all that out again. But so I mentioned this thing, and Marco, y'all don't understand that he's my brother-in-law, and we talk a lot of times, and he's always kind of been against me in this, and I don't want to say against me, but disagrees with me in this area. And so I'm going to start off right. This is where we're going to start off. And so I made a statement a couple of services ago, and I said, you don't have to have credit. The credit score was made by man. It wasn't made by God, and you don't have to worry about credit. Believe God, run, Jesus faith, right? And so he's like, and I knew I was going to make him twitch a little bit when I said that, because I know how he thinks. I know how he's done things and where he's at. So I'm going to just ask him some questions, and hopefully these will be some questions that you guys may have had. And so in that series, that was one of the things that we talked about. And so Marco, how is having good credit a good thing in today's world of finances?
Well, first off, I want to preface it by saying what I'm saying here is coming from my perspective.
Right.
As a 33-year-old guy, I can't speak for the younger people, and I can't speak for the older people. This is just what I've learned. I'm no professional.
Yeah, so don't be trying to, like what Marco said.
Right. So you're asking, how is credit beneficial?
Yeah, how is having credit a good thing in today's world and world of finances?
Well, having good credit and having bad credit is two different things. Having good credit is beneficial because it saves you a lot of money when you're applying for a loan or applying for a mortgage. You get lower interest rates, and then in the long term, you save money. A lot of times when you apply for utilities to get turned on, if you have good credit, you don't have to pay for a down payment. It's many ways credit can save you your insurance policies. You get better rates of insurance policies if you have good credit. And having bad credit gives you those opposite effects. You have to pay a down payment. You got to have higher interest rates. You can't qualify for certain loans. And I feel like when basic financial knowledge like that isn't getting taught, and a lot of people don't know, And so every time I have opportunity to speak on these things, I try to give everybody, my 2 cents and help out wherever I can.
2 cents, 15 cents.
15
See, you see me cringing there a little bit because I shared this a couple of weeks ago. A couple of weeks of services ago, I talked about how I went to get a refinance my home, and they're like, you don't exist in credit, like you're not on the grid. So I've been literally off the credit grid since 2013, and was that 2003? 2003, I've been off the credit grid. So like when I say off the credit grid, like I have not paid off my credit cards, got everything, and I hadn't done anything. It's been cash, trusting God, cash, trusting God, cash, trusting God, cash. And so I don't process that way, right? So that's why I was like, okay, that's probably one of the biggest things that we're like, no, you get credit. I'm like, oh, I want credit.
I mean, you can live without any credit, but like you said, if you want to make a big purchase, you won't be able to. And a lot of people don't realize that. You got young people, in their early 20s. They're like, all right, I saved up all my money. I'm ready to buy a house. Well, they haven't established any line of credit or credit history, and they realize that it's going to take 2 or 3 years more for them to develop that and be able to make that purchase. And a lot of people don't know that, so I try to, let them know about these things.
So,
Welcome.
So what's the difference between credit now and then credit like in Jesus' day?
Well, like in Jesus' day, they didn't have credit. They didn't have credit.
I need
karma.
2 fishes in the loaf. He's like, nah, you ain't got no credit, bro.
And so the way I see it and the way I think is, if people understand that credit is basically a history on how you handle finances and your reputation about finances. If you go to a bank right now and ask for a loan, they're going to run your credit to see if you're trustworthy to get it paid back. And based on how trustworthy you are, you'll get better terms or get larger amounts available to you as far as loans. Well, back in the day, if Sam went to Paul to go get a loan, Paul's like, I don't know you. Like, I got to ask people from your family or people that I know, like, hey.
Can I trust this dude?
What's up with Sam? Does he got a job? Can he pay back? Have you lent him money before and he paid you back? Like, no, that fool still owes me money. And then so Paul's going to be like, man, I can't let you borrow money because you ain't paid so-and-so yet. So it was all word of mouth. It was all, if you have money, you're not just going to let just any Joe borrow money. You're going to want to know who they are, what they need it for. And so credit score, to me, and credit system was set up for that purpose, so that people can know you and see if you're trustworthy and see if you got good credit or not. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
I think so. So for you personally, everybody, I have a credit score of 0. I'm not even sure what a good credit score looks like, but how do you personally utilize your credit, like credit or credit score? Like how do you utilize that personally? Like what are some things that you've been able to do with that?
Well, personally, I've been able to borrow money to finance some of my home investments that I'm doing, and because I had established good credit, and in my income, I was able to qualify for a large amount of loans. For a loan of a large amount so that I can invest in property and keep investing and in turn making money. So if I didn't have loans, if I didn't have a good credit, I wouldn't be able to get those loans. I wouldn't be able to get them at the low rates I am able to get them at. So without credit, I don't think I'd be able to do what I'm doing as fast as I'm doing. It would take me a lot longer saving up large amounts of money, cash myself versus using loan institutions.
So basically, you're taking your credit and creating capital.
Yes, I'm using other people's money
to make
more money. I mean, yeah. So,
see, if I was a businessman, I probably would be involved in that. But I'm a pastor, so I got to stay pastoring because I get myself in trouble when I start getting in business. So, for somebody like me, I've been off the grid since 2003. I have 0 credit. I've got a debit card and it works when there's money in it. And so, how would someone like me who has zero credit and or someone who has, I guess you would, see, I don't have bad credit because I don't have credit. So, but if somebody had like a low credit score or quote unquote bad credit or didn't have any credit, what would be like some first steps that you would like? You should probably do A, B, C, and D.
If you're starting off at zero, meaning you have no credit,
Hold on,
and
let me write this down.
and you also have no debt. You know, you're walking into like a 19-year-old, 18-year-old with no debt, no credit. First steps, you know, are to try to go to a credit union. They're local. They work with you. Try to get like a small loan, whatever you qualify, 200, 300, 500, depending on your income. If you don't make enough money and they still say we still can't let you borrow any money, you can do what's that loan called? Where you basically give the bank $200. Say, can you lend me my $200 back to me, and I'll make payments on it. Secured loan. Okay, so y'all know what y'all talking about. See, we got some smart people in here.
Smart folks. I try to surround myself with smart people.
Okay, so get your secured loan, and that will, every time you make those monthly payments, it'll show on your credit report that you made those on-time monthly payments. And when you pay that loan back, then the bank will be like, okay, you did good with your secured loan. Now we'll give you a loan with our money, and they'll give you a $500 loan. Pay that off in time. They was like, all right, you did good, 500. Let me know we gonna give you a little bit more. So, and again, you're building up your reputation. You're building up your report card, and all they want to do is know, can you be responsible with finances? As long as you're responsible and you can pay back, then your credit score goes up. And then once you realize more about credit cards and how a lot of people have this negative notion on them because their parents were always tell them, don't get credit cards because you're going to rack it up and then you're not going to be able to pay them off. You're going to be in debt all the time. But if people realize that to have a good credit score, you got to have a minimum of 2 credit cards with 0 balances on them. That's the key. Well, where people fall into the trap is where they get 2 credit cards, then they get in a financial bind, and they use those credit cards to get them out the financial bind, and now they're in a state where they have to pay these. They can't pay these credit cards off. They're doing the minimums, and now the benefit of getting 2 credit cards to help you out your credit score, that was the purpose of those 2 credit cards. Now they're doing the opposite. Now they're hurting you because you're carrying a balance on them. So basically, why it helps to have 2 credit cards with 0 balance on your credit score to make your credit score increase is because if Paracello, if you can see that I have I have like $5,000 in credit card money available to me, and I'm not using it, that means I can handle money. I can have I'm able to have money disposed to me, and I'm not gonna just spend it.
Go buck wild
with these. Like, okay, you could have money available to you, and you're not going to use it.
Be like a ninja.
So then the other credit card companies are going to look. It's like, man, I want him to have the opportunity to have my money available to him. So I could go apply to Discover for a credit card, and they'll be like, all right, I see you got a $5,000 credit card limit, but you ain't using it. We're going to give you $8,000 credit card limit for not using it. So now you got 2 credit cards with like, one is for $5,000, one is for $8,000. I'm just talking in general.
I'm watching, and the anxiety is setting in on some of these folks. You're like, that's exactly what happened to me.
So now you have $13,000 in credit card limit available to you in your wallet, and you're not using it. They're like, man, this joker here, he's good at money. We can trust him with money. We can trust him that we can have money available to him, and he's not gonna go buck wild and use it. That's when your credit score starts going up. Whenever you can show that you have a lot of credit card limit money available to you, and you not use it, your credit score is going to go up high. And a lot of people don't understand that and don't realize that, and they weren't taught that. And I don't know if this is new information for a lot of people in this room, or is this more like, yeah, Marco, we already knew that.
I knew that. You're not telling me nothing I didn't know.
But yeah, that's how credit cards can help your credit, is by having money available to you and not use it.
I think for me, the reason I wanted to do this, and the reason I try to do finance series, not all the pastors that are watching on Facebook, they're all gonna get mad at me. I try to do finance messages and series not based on tithing, giving, and sowing, but helping our congregation and church folks be a blessing, because it's the 10% is that's God's. We struggle, Christians, believers, folks, they struggle on handling the 90%. And so that's why I'm always trying to teach on, like, let's get better at handling the 90, because we're still stewards over that 90. So you were talking about having credit and then let you borrow money. So what is your perspective biblically? What is your perspective emotionally, experience on lending and borrowing? Because I know what the Bible says about we're supposed to be the lenders, not the borrowers. Be the head, not the tail. So how does that play into like where you're at right now? You got 15 grand on credit cards. You like, yo, I could ball out if I want to, but
yes,
I don't.
So yeah, that what he just said specifically. I always say, we're supposed to be the lender, not the borrower. We should be the head, not the tail. We should be the people in this room that people go to and say, hey, man, I know you good with God. Let me hold some. Let me hold $100. We should be the ones that lending out money. We should be in that position because we're children of God. But not everybody came into this world with money. There's such thing as generational wealth, and I didn't come through that. I like Pastor Cello's message that he spoke on a couple weeks ago, where he was saying this brick is like $1. Money is like a tool, and he asked, like, who would rather have 100 bricks or would have $100? And everybody's like, I'd rather have $100. And in my chair, I'm thinking, man, them bricks are expensive. They're like $1.25 a brick. You better get them bricks, because them bricks are worth more than $1 bill. And see, but we don't think that way. And I was telling Pastor Settle, like, in my mind, I'm thinking, you gotta save up your bricks. If you want to build a house, you gotta have about $50,000 bricks to build a house. I don't know how much it takes, but you need a lot of bricks to make your home. So if we want our home, when we were born, we weren't given a pacifier and 10,000 bricks. Here's your bricks. I was born without any bricks. There's, like I said, there's people who come from generational wealth and their family has money. A lot of people, there's people who don't have to worry about their first home purchase or the first car purchase, because their parents are able to do that to them. There's nothing wrong with that. I wish I would be in that position for my kids, so that they're not having to start at ground zero. And that's part of my goal, is to set myself up so that I can set my kids up and their kids. I want to get to the point where we start creating generational wealth, and be a blessing to the people in this church, to blessings in my family and my friends, and I just want to be. That's why I try hard, I work hard. I do my tithes and offerings. And that way, I just trying to be a blessing. That's really all I'm trying to do.
I was looking at your wife, and you said work hard. She was like,
she said, all
right. Does not work hard.
Wait till we get home.
He worked. She said he worked. He just don't work hard. And so it's kind of what you're talking about, being a lender in a bar. You can't really be a lender unless you have ownership, right? So you have to have ownership of what that looks like. Explain what like ownership is like.
Okay, and that's a point that I wanted to hit that I forgot, is, since I didn't come from money, everybody has to start off somewhere. Everybody has to start off in an apartment, in a roommate, or living somewhere. We have to be the renters. I was a renter, but if you're a renter with the mindset that this is temporary, I am trying my best to get my own home, my own place. That's the goal. So I don't want anybody to feel like, dang, Marco's coming at us like, man, I borrow money, like he's talking to me, he's down to me. Like, no, I started from that mentality. Everybody has to start somewhere, and you do have to borrow money. But the thing is, as long as you think of it as short term, Nikki and I, when we got married, we moved into our first apartment, and yeah, we could have afforded a better apartment than what we had, but we really went to see who's the cheapest apartment in Waco, and
Nikki was like, I want this. And he's like, this is what we doing.
Well, there was a $400 a month apartment, but we looked at them, it was like, nah, we could move up to a $500 a month apartment. And it was a 1-bedroom apartment, smelled like smoke. They did put new carpet and fresh paint, so it looked decent, but it wasn't the best apartment. Like I said, it was a 1-bedroom apartment. Utilities were paid, and we made it work. Of course, we didn't have kids at that time, so it's not like it was a big adjustment. But what I'm saying is, yeah, we could have afforded to have a much nicer apartment that had a pool, that had exercise room and all that, but we didn't opt for that because we knew we wanted to save up for a down payment on a home. So we bought the cheapest apartment we can get, and we just started racking up tools.
I remember, I think y'all were probably in that. I think y'all had just moved in there. Y'all were probably in there maybe a year, and it rained.
Oh, yes.
But they were like, we went over, man. We had dinner with them, and they had their little pad. They was the newlyweds, man. We was over there. And then like a week later, man, it had rained real hard. And he's like, man, our house, apartment flooded. And it was just like, everything was flooded.
Yes. All right. So, yeah, I want to hear a funny story. So we didn't know that area flooded bad. And that day we did have like flash floods come. And where I like to park in the parking lot, it was like at the very bottom of the parking, like the parking lot like was like the bowl, and I parked right above the drain of the pit of that bowl. That was and if anybody knows me, I like to say consistent. If I park somewhere, I'm gonna park there every time.
Consistency's key, bro. Consistency is key.
So yes, there was a bunch of rain in our apartment. It was like 2 inches of rain every time. And it was all carpet, so every time you step, it was whoosh, whoosh.
I remember that.
And then our furniture is swelled because it was made out of wood, so the furniture swelled at the bottom. And then I go out to see my car. My car was halfway submerged in water. Like there was water all in my Mitsubishi. But that it didn't break down. There wasn't no engine damage to it. I shop vac it, dried, and it didn't smell like mold, so it survived. I love that little car. It's still around too.
So how does that work? Like when you're trying to go after something, when you get hit with those types of challenges, like what does that do to you mentally? What does that do to you emotionally?
It is a setback, but it really isn't. It isn't as hard as if you weren't prepared for it. Nikki and I, like I said, we had savings because we were saving up for a down payment. We had to tap into that for a little bit to buy a shop vac. And that's it. It really wasn't a big financial setback, but that's a good question that you asked, because we have had other setbacks where a year after we bought our first house, we had to redo the whole plumbing on the house, but we had savings.
He was one of the guys I was talking about last year.
Yes, you did mention that. But since we had savings, it's a setback, but not that bad. We were ready for it. I mean, we were able to cover it, and a lot of that has to do with living within your means. Anybody can live within their means if they really wanted to.
Okay, I have a question.
Uh-oh.
So, what does that mean? Okay. Living within your means.
So I was thinking about
that. Because I means to do a lot, and sometimes I don't means doing to nothing.
So let's say you work in a minimum wage job and you're working 40 hours a week. That's like what, $250 a week, $1,000 a month. Living within that $1,000 a month and trying to save some of that $1,000 to the side, whether it's $20, because $1,000 nowadays is nothing.
So
Trust me, I know.
So I gotta stop going to McAllister.
So yeah, I don't want y'all looking at me like, man, Marco, you don't know what it's like to live on $1,000. I kind of don't, because I didn't. I had a good job, but at the same time, if I had to live on $1,000 today, I wouldn't be living by myself. I'd have a roommate with me, or it should be paying. And so you gotta sit down and say, okay, if $500 of the $1,000 a month is gonna go to my living expenses, then that means the other $500 is gonna have to go to take care of car insurance. You're not gonna be able to afford a car payment, so you're gonna have to have your cash car. Just living within that $1,000. People can do it. I know a guy who lives in the country and doesn't have electricity by choice. He rather live off the grid. He cooks his fire over a wood stove or outside in the barbecue pit. He has a generator to power up his batteries. I mean, so he's like living like almost like a survivalist or whatever.
That's
But
gangsta.
but you know, if you want to go to those extreme measures, it's possible to live within your means. We just don't want to cut cable out. We don't want to cut internet out. We don't want to go home and eat every day. And there was a time when Nikki and I, at the beginning of our marriage, is when we were trying to save for the down payment of our home. Every Sunday, you're like, hey man, we're gonna go out to eat over here. And Nikki and I would have to respond like, no, you know, we gotta go. We're trying to save up, so we'd go home and eat. You know, that's a sacrifice. So living within your means, if you try hard enough, you can do it. It's just how bad do you want to live in financial freedom?
So going back to ownership and generational wealth, how do you define? You mentioned generational wealth. How do you define generational wealth? Like, what from your perspective? Like,
To be able to pass down to your family, not necessarily just in monetary means, not just dollar bills, but pass down property, a car, you know, family heirlooms, whether it's jewelry, you know, just pass something down. Not to you don't. What I don't want is when I pass away, my family members are gonna have to figure out a way to take care of all the costs and all that stuff. No, I want the people around me to be able to, you know, celebrate the life that I lived and not have to worry about any of that. So that's what I shoot for, and that's one of my motivators.
so talking about generational wealth, talking about ownership. How have you used your credit?
Credit. So
How have you used your credit to begin to build generational wealth for yourself and your family?
So a lot of y'all may know, because I posted on my Facebook, that last year I was able to pay off my home, and
Thank you, by the way. I appreciate that. Because he celebrated. He took us to dinner because he paid off his home. I was like, that's dope.
Hey,
I was like, that's what's up, bro. What's up? Yeah, pay off another home. Let's go eat. No.
And you have to have goals and set goals for yourself and work hard to get to those goals. If y'all knew me when me and Nikki we got married, y'all knew that, because I told everybody I'm buying a house, but my goal is to pay it off in 10 years. I was very vocal about that. Everybody, if you knew around me, you knew that, man, Marco has high hopes.
So you spoke it into existence.
Spoke it into existence.
Speaking it.
And a lot of people I know are probably thinking he's about to go into a rude awakening and find out that it's not that easy to pay off a house. I had a 30-year mortgage that I wanted to pay off in 10 years, and we did it in 12. You know, so it was a challenge, and one of the biggest sacrifices. Like, people ask me, how did you do it? One of the biggest things, not the only thing, but one of the biggest thing is that, you know, we had 2 kids. Well, we had Mariana for a couple years, which is 3, and then we had Carlos after the 3 years. So that means we had tax returns. We had a tax credit. You know, while everybody, and so every time we had a $4,000, $3,000 tax credit.
You weren't buying big TVs?
Nope. We wanted to.
You weren't buying a new car?
We wanted to go on vacation. We
90 days, same as cash.
Get another car, furniture. No, that went straight to the principal of our house.
I was wondering why Nikki was so frustrated in tax season.
Yes, and
I'm joking. I'm just messing around.
And you got to realize how tough that was when the people around us, our peers, you know, that was getting this big check. You know, they're like, man, we're gonna go do this. We're gonna go to Disney. We're gonna do this. And I'm like, babe, right now is not our time. Right now we're in savings mode. Like, right, we'll get there later, and when we get there, we'll be able to do it big, and we'll be able to enjoy ourselves. But right now, you know, we're hibernation mode right now. So
That's dope.
or getting ready for hibernation. But yeah, that was a big. So if you're in the process of paying off a house, or you got a mortgage and you wanna and you have kids so that you can get a tax credit every year, that's a good way to tackle that principal amount.
So, what are some key? What would you say for a takeaway? Some key thoughts or key things that we could do to change our perspective or change how if we're going this direction and we're not really thinking about generational wealth, if we're not thinking about saving, if we're not really thinking about our credit, like what are some key things that we can do to move us over, make that transition from this is where I'm at, this is where I want to go. Because I very rarely do I ever find anybody that I've ever talked to about finances that is like, oh man, I just love living check to check. It's great. Like I've never met anybody like just like, oh, like this is really good. Like, you know, everybody wants to get out of that rat race. Everybody wants to get out of that thought process. And so what would be some things that you would say, like, you can do 1, 2, and 3, and it'll start getting you in that direction? Because everything starts, it's small steps. It's not like doing it all at once. So what would be like, if they walked out of here, they could say, okay, starting tomorrow at lunch, nobody's going to lunch today. That's how we're going to start.
Yeah, where everybody's going home today to eat after this.
Kids are like, why do I Chuck E. Cheese? Like, nah, bro,
No.
bologna sandwiches.
You got to watch them. Just like that. So basically, y'all have all heard it. Cut down any unneeded expenses that you can cut down. But one of my closest friends I was telling her, I was like, man, Priscilla asked me to talk on Sunday. I don't know what I'm gonna say, and she's like, "What are you gonna say? What are you gonna tell? What are you gonna tell the people?" She's like, "So, like, I got a question." She asked me. She's like, should I start paying down my loans if I have extra money at the end of the week or end of the month?" I'm like, I told her, I said, if you don't have any kind of savings, that's the first thing you need to do is have some kind of savings. Set up a goal, whether it's a one paycheck's worth of savings, 2 paychecks worth of savings, whatever you can do, but have any savings before you start paying extra on bills. Because what you don't want is you're taking all your extra funds to pay off extra on credit cards, which is good, but then, you know, some life surprise happen. You gotta do a major car repair, major house repair, something like that happens, and now you're in deep water. So create you a little bit of savings, and then think about, you know, your side hustles. What can you do that you like to do, that you're passionate about, that you can use that to gain some kind of money into your household? You know, I do a lot of things on the side that I just get consumed by. Like if you've talked to me at all in the past couple of weeks, you know I'm building a fence. I'm building a privacy fence. We're getting ready to move to our new home, and I'm also very frugal. So
he ain't cheap. He frugal.
I'm frugal.
You can watch the podcast on Cheap and Frugal. We got a podcast, but he frugal. He ain't cheap.
And so I could have paid a company to come in and put up this big privacy fence, but if I could do it for myself at half price, then that's a motivator for me to be watching all kinds of YouTube videos. And ask Nikki, she'll tell you, I was just hours and hours of just watching YouTube videos on how to put up a privacy fence. And my wife's like, I've never seen you work with tools. How you gonna put that up? You don't even own the tools to get that done. I'm like, I'm watching, and so
that's a good helpmate.
A buddy of mine let me borrow his nail gun, and I rented a post hole digger. I'm digging posts, and man, that's a tough job. Now I have a newfound appreciation for fences. Every time I see a brand new fence, I'm like, ooh, look at that fence. It took a lot of work to put that fence.
A lot of work and a lot of money.
And so I'm almost done. I'm about 75% done with this fence, and I'm building it on the weekends whenever I have time. And, you know, you can say, well, Marco, why didn't you just pay somebody to do it? Yeah, you can cover it. I'm like, yeah, I could have covered it, but am I being a good steward over my money? And am I using the money the best way I can do it? You know, yeah, I could have just blew it off and paid somebody to do it. But now I'm saving myself a couple grand by doing it myself. I'm already not doing much on the weekends. What am I doing? Watching Netflix, chilling at the house.
Seen the face.
So yeah, Marco, go out there and work. Do it. Save the money. And at the end of the day, the way I view money, like Pastor said, I view it like tools. If you can save those tools to be able to build something else, then do that instead of spending it all on a privacy fence that you could probably get done yourself.
I did my own fence too.
Yeah.
I put mine up.
I remember that. And Parcello, he was telling me, man, bro, hit me up. I'll help you. And I'm like, man, I know you're busy. I don't want to bother you. So
I'll come dig your hole, or I'll come hold your water for you.
But but so yeah, going back to what I was saying is, if you can save yourself money by doing it yourself, uh, cut your own grass. I don't change my own oil. I'm not good with that. I pay somebody else to change my oil. But I know some of y'all in this room do change their own oil. So I mean, that's a good way. Start doing things on your own. There's no excuse to not want to do it when we have resources like YouTube to where we can learn how to do a lot of things and save your money. Um, and again, you're trying to create your tools. You're trying to produce a bunch of tools and gain a bunch of tools so that you can
Collecting bricks.
collect the bricks, so that you can be a blessing to the people around you, so you can give to the people around you. It's not the game is not to try to hoard and keep and build up. It's to also bless the people around you.
So, talking about, working and putting your own fence up and trying to do all the manual labor.
Manual
That's he's a guy who puts fences up. So when you think about that, so that has, you have to have discipline to be able to do that kind of stuff.
Major
So,
discipline.
What does financial discipline look like on a daily, weekly, monthly basis for you?
I've already touched on that. Like that's what I'm saying. Like, if you set your goals so that you know what you're working towards, and if your goal is to save $50 a week, save the $50 a week. If one week something happened and you can only save $40 a week, say, okay, I'm gonna put the 60 in next week, and just be disciplined to stay on track with the goal that you set yourself, and that way, and once you meet that goal that you have, it feels good. The next goal that you set, you'll have a little bit more confidence and a little more oomph to want to get that goal, and just be disciplined. Stay focused on it. Talk to your best friend, your spouse about what your goals that you're trying to achieve. That way, they know. And I don't like to have people see me fail. So I'm like, that's another thing that keeps me motivated. I want to be there and show that consistency, determination, that you're gonna see. Also be a man of my word. As much as I can. Just work towards your goal.
So, being disciplined. Sometimes we talked about this about sacrificing and having sacrifice or sacrificing things. What is being disciplined, sacrificing? You talked about stewardship. How do all those things fit into your belief on giving? You mentioned about being able to be a blessing to folks, and you mentioned about tithing and stuff like that. So how does that fit into the overall picture? Because a lot of times we set it aside separately, but from what I'm hearing you saying, like, you encompass it. It's all together.
It's all together, especially when the word says we need to be a cheerful giver. Man, it'd be really hard to be a cheerful giver if you live in paycheck to paycheck and can't make ends meet. I'm a firm believer that God wants us to live a life that we're not having to think about how we're gonna pay this bill or that bill. I think if we're able to set ourselves up to where, instead of thinking, how am I gonna pay for this bill, if we could think about, man, how am I gonna invest this money? Should I invest it here? Those are the questions and the thoughts I think we should be having, not where am I gonna get it. I was telling Pastor how the word says the birds don't worry about their next meal. God provides for us, but if the birds never leave their nest, they're not gonna get their first meal. It's faith without works is dead. You gotta have faith and works. You can't just sit at home and believe God that all your bills are gonna get paid. And I'm like, all right, God, I'm gonna test you. I'm gonna sit right here, and you're gonna pay all my bills. Here we go. Starting now. Go. No, you gotta go outside and get your job. You gotta do your part along with the faith. So I mean, it's all it's all encompassing. It all works together. And if we are in that position to not worry about money, we can live a happier life. They talk about what finances is one of the leading reasons for divorce. If finances isn't an issue, man, what that would be, you'd have a so much better marriage or life.
The only thing you fight if you're not fighting over finance, you just fight over sex.
There you go.
That's about it. Y'all got all quiet. I'm like, what? Shh, don't talk about that. It's in church. So, wrapping up, what would be the one thing if we sat up here for like 30, 45 minutes? What would be the one thing, like, do this one thing and it'll start changing your financial situation? What would be the one thing that you would say, like, do this? If you can just do this one thing, what would you say that would be? Because you know me, like, I'm an application guy. Like, I'm like, man, when you walk out here, go do this thing. This is this week's challenge. We'll be like, okay, what's this? Like, what would you say? What would be the one thing you say, guys? If you can make this one adjustment, you'll start seeing a difference.
I think before you can start investing, before you can start, doing above, which is living within your means, you have to have a savings. So if you don't have, let's say, one paycheck's worth of savings set aside, then I think that would be a great starting point. Because that way, once you have that one paycheck's worth of savings, then you're able to, okay, now stretch your wings out and start tackling debt, start making big decisions to cut unneeded expenses, and that's it. If that was the one thing, is start some kind of savings amount, and if one paycheck's worth of savings, that'd be a good place to start.
Cool. So, what you said that you listen to different folks, and as far as who are some people that you listen to, books you've read, like things that could help folks?
So I listened a lot to Dave Ramsey. That was one of my initial ones. I listened to Robert Kiyosaki. I listened to Pastor Cello. And at home, I'm always watching documentaries. I'm watching YouTube videos on how people became millionaires. I watch videos on how Crocs, how were they able to be a successful company, or what was the downfall to Cece's Pizza. I'm always looking at
we have these are conversations that we talk about. Like we talking
Yes.
about, you see this documentary, we start talking about it.
So I'm always watching how somebody lives in New York on a $40,000 salary. I mean, and they're like, that's impossible living in New York at $40,000. And we see this person going to free events, dumpster diving, doing all these extreme things. But still, I take bits and pieces from each thing that I watch and that I think that I can apply to my life. And I'm always trying to soak up information, learn wherever and so YouTube, you can find a lot of good stuff come up, and different podcasts to help you how to save money and have financial freedom.
Cool. So this is the part where this is the part where he's really going to get nervous, because I didn't tell him I was going to do this. But you know me, I always got to take people outside their comfort zone. So just real quick, we're wrapping up. But before we do, I wanted to see if there is anybody have a question that they would like to ask him about his marriage, about race. No, I'm joking. Is anybody who would like to have any questions that you might want to ask? Just something that we may not have touched on or talked about. That's a good question. So she's asking. So she's asking. He mentioned about starting a savings. So she's asking, how do you save that? Do you save that cash, or what's the best way to save that?
To everybody, there would be a different solution depending on yourself. We all know each other. We know how we are. If we have that amount, like we already got 300 saved up, and we know we got in our checking account, and our debit card's in our back pocket. And the guys just said, hey, let's go get some wings. And you're like, I don't got no money, but I got this debit card that has that $300 I started saving up. Then that's probably not going to be your best option. Cash, if you can have cash at the house and you think it's going to be safe there, that's an option. Another thing people do is they'll tell me, like, Marco, I'm bad with finances. I know you good with it, so I'm going to give you $100 every week, and you just save it for me. And they'll be like, "Hey, Marco, I'm ready to cash out. Like, all right, here's your $1,200 or $1,000." And I've had several people do that to me. So if you have a best friend that you trust in, that you want to give it to them because you can't trust yourself with that money, that's another solution.
That's why I don't oversee the finances at Riverside Community Church, because I'll be giving and sowing and buying, and they be like, "Yo, we ain't got." I'm like, "Trust God."
And if you don't feel comfortable asking the question here, just ask me, text me, ask me. I get a lot of people ask me questions all the time, and I'm happy to help. I did see your hand, yes, ma'am.
So she was saying that they put it in savings. If you have a different
That's-
account, put it. Yeah. So you don't have to. So when you. So the way your bank account is set up. I said, so the way that your bank account is set up, I got to take from my savings, put over to my credit card.
Uh, yes, Bree. Yes.
Yeah, so you get interest on your savings account if you have a savings account. Anybody else have a question?
Keep it separate. He's like, I purposefully lost my credit card.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Burn through it. Yes, ma'am. Side hustles.
Side hustles. Um, there's many options for the extra money. If you don't need it for living expenses, definitely don't spend it. Save it. But like, there's different ways to save money. You know, you could actually just, like I was saying earlier, hold on to it as cash, or you could say, like other people in this room, invest it in savings. If you can invest it in a 401k and mutual accounts. Now you're talking about long-term investments and how your money can start actually making more money. This motivates me to go ahead and start doing this course you were talking about, and it'll be more detailed as far as how to invest, what investments looks like, risky investments, low risk investments, long-term investments.
Yes, you on the
ma'am.
balcony.
Savings, yes.
Without spending. Yeah. Anybody else have anything else? You can look him up. He's on every social media platform. His podcast comes out every Thursday.
Oh man.
His YouTube channel is, and he has a show on CNN and Fox. No, I'm joking.
I do want to say I really appreciate Paracello doing this because, as many of y'all may know, I work at Dr. Pepper, and when we started having manager meetings with vice presidents and presidents.
That was your promotion, though, when you got promoted, though, right? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, we had a manager, one of the area president got promoted, and this guy, I just say his name just so we know who we're talking about. His name is Holland. So Holland came in. When he came in, he started having a lot more leadership courses. He was leadership mindset. The people before him, it was all about, selling Dr. Pepper, how we're gonna sell it, sales numbers, money, how much money we're making, how much money we're losing. It was all business oriented. But when Holland came in, he really was trying to set the culture of all of us on this call, we're not managers, we're leaders. And if we're not acting like leaders, we need to start acting like leaders. And he would literally send us through what's his name, Maxwell,
John Maxwell?
John Maxwell courses, and like investing in buying us leadership books, and this something that no other manager did. And every time we have a meeting, he sets time to talk about our personal finances. And at first, we would be like, "Why are we talking about like our finances?" He's like, and he was like, "Because I want y'all to start preparing for retirement. You know, we're not going to be able to work forever, so I want to take a time to talk about different scenarios. If person A saved X amount of money for this amount of years, this is how much money he's going to have at retirement. So he's like, I want to make sure that y'all are planning for y'all's retirement. Because me as a leader, if I didn't care about y'all's well-being, individual finances, then y'all not going to care about the company and the company's finances. And so he always took time, to talk about make sure that we're setting ourselves up for success in the long term. And I thought that was pretty cool that he's taking time to think about us and not just think about what money we're making the company. So and that's what Pastor doing. I feel like that's what he's doing now. He's taking a Sunday to talk about finances and what the Word says about finances. And he wants us to make sure that we're the head, not the tail, that we're the lenders, not the borrowers, and that and when you don't have the daily stresses of daily finances, you're able to live a happier life, a meaningful life, a cheerful life, and I think that's what Pastor Cello wants for us.
Absolutely, and the thing is I try to approach finances. I try to approach the scriptures from the perspective of actually being who we're called to be, living that abundant life here on earth, being the blessing that we're supposed to be, being the kings and priests that we're supposed to be. And a lot of times, a lot of the application and the how-to and the discussion of things gets lost in the preaching of the message. And so you get the preaching aspect, but there's no application, there's no dialogue. And so you're like, okay, well, you're going to be good stewards, but what is that? What does good stewardship look like? How do you be a better steward? How do you walk out love? How do you walk out forgiveness? How do you handle the boss that has a bad attitude? And so my whole premise on doing these types of things is so that when you come in, you're already coming to service on a Sunday. We can just have this discussion, and we can have it with each other and be open about it, because traditionally a church doesn't do that. If you want to come to a special finance meeting, you can sign up on the table out there, or come on a Thursday night and Friday. And I know what it's like to have 4 kids in school, trying to live life, pay your bills, go to church, serve, and then come to a meeting and find childcare. So it's a mess. And so we're already here on Sundays. We already have our kids ministry. Everything's already going. So let's just have these conversations. Amen. Did you guys get something this morning? Amen. Man, I appreciate you guys coming and joining us.
Thank you for staying awake.
Thank you for staying awake. That's how I feel. I'm going to put these folks to sleep. Marco, I appreciate your input, man, letting us pick your brain a little bit.
Thank you.
You can snag him up. He'll be at the book signing table
I got my merch I'm trying to sell
on the second floor. And if you want to pick up your books and his product, you can pick that up in the basement. And so, man, appreciate you guys so much. Y'all be blessed. Love you guys. Y'all have a good week, and don't forget about Friendsgiving coming up. Y'all be blessed. Have a good Sunday, Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday.
Thank you, guys.
When I get my money, when I get my money.